Hey friends, it's Simon Hurley from Inklipse and welcome to another video. Now in today's tutorial, I'm going to be sharing how to use my new flower builder stencil to create 3 different flowers, and since they're in all different parts, you can create some really unique looking flowers tailored to whatever project you're creating. So whether you're putting ink through your stencil or doing different techniques with texture pastes and watercolors, you can create some really awesome stuff. And let's get started. So here is what the stencil looks like in its package, and I decided this one needed a video first because although it's in the packaging like this, it looks a little bit intimidating and confusing. It's one of my favorite products because it's so versatile, but you don't really get to see much in the package. So let's jump right into it and show you some of the flowers you can create. Okay, so I'm just going to start out with my stark white cardstock, and I folded this into a top folding A2 size card. What I really like about this stencil is you can keep things super simple and just do a straight up card base and then finish your card pretty quickly with these flowers. So with this stencil, it's got 3 different flowers you can build in it, and they're in rows like this, so you can see the 3 different flowers you're creating as you go. So whether you want to mark these with Sharpies or something like that, you can pretty easily find the images across that work together with the flower, since they sort of fit in with each other in the images. And then you have an assortment of leaves on the side here, which you can use in any of the flowers, and they work really nicely to kind of build your whole scene together. Okay, so let's start off with the hibiscus flower. I'm going to put this down, and I'm working on the new Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station. And what this means is I'm going to just place my magnets down, and instead of having to use washi tape to hold things down, you just place these magnets, and it's super easy, and your project isn't going anywhere on your mat, so you're able to really easily stencil without any ripped pages or anything like that. So I'm going to go in here with Rosy Cheeks. This is my light pink kind of color here. I'm going to tap off to the side, and then I'm just going to go in and start blending here. Now when I do this with this stencil, I start from the center of those flowers. Since they have these little detailed pieces, you don't want to go in a circular motion. You just want to go right from the center out, and you're going to get a really nice blend and shading then. And then all I'm going to do is just continue to do this with the rest of the petals. And it's pretty easy to do. You don't need to add tons of ink into there, just enough to kind of add a little bit of color and shading to the flower. Now what I really like about having this in a stenciling version is you're able to also go in with other colors. So rather than this being a stamp and me not being able to add any more color to this, I can then go in with whatever color I want and kind of add more shading to this flower. So I'm going to end up going in with Slippery When Wet here. This is a nice yellow, kind of deep, rich color. I'm just going to go in with the really fine detail blending tool, and all I need to do is just add a little bit of color into wherever you really want. So whether you want to add it starting from the outside, going in, kind of add it on the edge of that petal there, or whether you want to add it coming from right in the inside there, you can really create your own unique flower. And that's what I love about this, is that, you know, they are certain flowers that you're creating here and building up, but you also have the freedom to put whatever colors in there and really blend your flower to make it really super unique for whoever you're giving the card to. So to line up the next piece, I'm going to move down the row. You can see this one fits in next, and I'm going to just place this right over top of my flower that I had just blended. And you'll know when you have it placed right, because it kind of masks off the area that you had just blended. So once I have done that, I'm going to place my next magnets down here to hold that piece in place, and then we can continue our blending. Now I also want to point out there are other images around that you could easily hit with your blending tool if you're not careful enough. So if you really want that clean blend and you're going on a 1-layer card and you want to make sure you don't hit those pieces, you could definitely pull out a little piece of tape, and it's super easy to just kind of put that right over top of some of those areas that are a little bit close. And then they're pretty easy to pull off and reuse that tape again over and over. But I tend to be kind of lazy and avoid doing that. But it's pretty easy to kind of lift those up and continue on with your project. So it's not a really big deal. We just decided to do that to keep it to one stencil, to keep it really nice and budget friendly for you guys, but also fit as many images on here as we can. So I'm going to go in with my Rosy Cheeks color and just continue, like I said, starting right from the center there and moving out to the outside. And by just adding that little touch of color into there, that Slippery When Wet almost turns into kind of this orange tone because it mixes and blends with that pink color that we added on there too. Since there are those translucent dyes, it kind of blends and creates a really cool look. Now there's only 2 more pieces we have to do with this, and I recommend starting with this little piece for the center. So this little guy I'm going to put right in the center here. You just want to kind of line it up, and again, you'll know that it's in the right place when it really nicely masks off those other areas. So if you still see some of that ink that you have created around that center area, then just keep moving your stencil until it kind of disappears and masks that off. For the little small center portions, I recommend using this little detail blender, and it really makes it easy to get into those small spaces and blend those out. And the last and final one is this little center of that flower. All I need to do is, again, go in the center until it masks it all off, place it down, and then I'll go in with Slippery When Wet again and just go in to that center area. And if I wanted to too, I can go in here and let's say I want to add a little bit of clear skies. This is a nice blue color, really light blue. And I'm just going to add it kind of to the side portions of the center of that hibiscus there. So that's going to kind of blend and create a little bit of a green color there. But I think it just adds a little bit more dimension to the center of your flower. So look at that, we've created a flower there. I love how that looks. And once you guys go about this, it's really quite easy once you get the hang of it to create all these fun florals. Now to create the leaves for your flowers and really bring this flower to life, all you need to do is choose some leaves from this side here and just add them right next to your flower. So I'm going to start off with this leaf right here. We'll go in with this one, we'll put it right down here. And then I'm going to go in with Overzealous, and I'm going to start my ink blending. Now I go in with my mini blending tool here, and all you need to do is just bring that right onto the surface there. And I kind of angle it a little bit so you can get into some of those tight spaces. Now right when it gets up to that flower, I stop blending. So if you have a hard time with that, I'll show you an easier way to kind of mask that off and make sure you have a really nice clean edge. But then I'm able to go in with colors like Later Gator, which is a little bit of a darker green, and I'm just going to go into here and blend some of that shadow onto there. So it just adds a little bit of shading to your flower. And finally, I'll go in with this larger leaf up here. I'm just going to bring in my Overzealous color again. And I'm going to kind of angle that. Once it hits that flower, I'll stop my blending. And then I can go in with that littler blender to go in with the darker color. And that really works nicely to add that nice dark color into there. And I just love the shading you can get into this. Now, if you also want to go back in with Overzealous because you didn't get enough right around that edge, you can easily go back into there with that color and add a little bit of shading there too. So it makes it super simple. Now let's move on to the middle row of flowers right here. Now I'm going to start off with this piece here, but you could really start off with whatever you want, whether it's either one of these because it's kind of a circular flower. So it just builds right off of each other. I'm going to go in here with my stencil and line it up wherever I want my flower to be. And then I'm going to bring in Bee Sting, and this is a darker, rich red color. So I'm just going to go in here. Now for this one, I like to start in the center, and with a circular motion, I'm just going to bring my ink onto the piece. Now as I'm blending, I'm just going right up to that edge, and I don't want to add a full layer of ink here. So you'll see as I go up to the edge, I get a little bit lighter. And that's why starting in the center really helps, because it'll add that darker color of ink to the center and then lighten it up near the edge. Now when I go in to line up this second piece here, I want to make sure this circle is right into the center. And then you also want to make sure that each piece is approximately in the center of each one of those petals. Now this isn't going to really cover up the piece. There's still some ink showing here with this one. Again, I'm starting in the center with this flower since it's that circular flower, and I'm just going to go with circular motions outward. This one doesn't have as many little pieces, so it's easier to not get caught on some of those edges. And then I'll pull those magnets off, and we're starting to build up our really fun flower there. Now to finish this off, the two centers are right here. You're going to want to start off with this circle center, and it just fits in perfectly to the middle of that flower. And for this one, I'm just using Over the Moon, and I'm just going to go in with that detail blending tool again, and just bring that lighter color right to the center of that flower. I really love that light yellow color there for that center. And I'm going to finish it off with the detailed center. So again, just placing that right in the center of the flower. And then for this one, I'm going in with Slippery When Wet again. So this is that nice dark yellow, kind of mustardy color. And for this one, you really want to push that blending tool into some of those spaces since it's really kind of a small space. So you just want to apply a little bit more pressure as you're going into those spaces to really push that ink through there. Now once I'm done with that, I lift it off my stencil and look at that fun flower you get there. I love that center of the flower and how playful these petals are as they kind of overlap each other and create that really fun and stunning look. Now I mentioned if you want to be a little bit more careful when adding leaves, here's an easy way to do so. So let's say I want to add a leaf coming out of this flower and going kind of near the hibiscus, but I don't want it to hit the hibiscus. All I'm going to do is grab a little piece of tape, and I'm just going to easily tape off the hibiscus. Now you don't need to go right up to the edge, it doesn't need to be super precise, but this is just going to basically protect the hibiscus from any ink that gets near it. I can go right in here, and I'm just going to do my ink blending, and again, I'll go right up to the edge of that flower, and since the hibiscus is covered, it's not going to get any ink there. And then I'll bring Later Gator in as well. This is that darker green. I'm just going to add a little bit of shading around these flowers, and right where it hits that hibiscus, I'll add a little bit of a dark shadow there too, since that flower would cast a shadow onto it. And then once I pull off these pieces of tape, it's going to create a really beautiful effect, and you can see there the hibiscus has a really nice clean edge, whereas some of these kind of fade up to that flower. I'm fine with that look, but if you want that really nice clean and crisp edge, you might want to go in and tape those, and that's going to help you to get that effect. Now we've been using lots of ink on this stencil, and for this next part I'm going to need it clean for the next technique that I'm going to do. So since we're using my dye-based inks, all you need to do to keep it clean is just spray the surface of it, and then go in with a rag or a paper towel or a baby wipe and just clean off the surface by dabbing it up and down like this. Since there's so many little edges in there, it's pretty easy to get caught with a rag or a cloth or something like that. So going in and just pouncing on top of it is going to clean all that ink off and dry the surface as well. Now the cool part about this stencil is you can use it either way. So I've been creating all my flowers this way, so my hibiscus had the stem facing this way, but if you want to, you could easily flip the stencil over and get the opposite of whatever image you're doing. So that's a really cool way to, again, kind of get different facing flowers, whether you want to put them on different sides of your cards, or if you want to make the leaves face different ways as well. This is a really great way to do so. So for this flower, I want that leaf to face that way to create one on the other side there. So all I need to do is just place my stencil down now that it's flipped over, and then I'll go in with a little bit of Overzealous and my mini blender. I'm just going to go into that space with my little color there. And that's going to easily create another leaf in the opposite direction. And I find that flipping the stencil to do that creates a really cool look. Okay, so moving on to the top flower. This one's really fun, and I like to start off with this middle portion again because it kind of grounds the whole flower. And again, starting off with this isn't going to change anything, but this kind of gives more of a shape of it. So I start off with that portion and leave a little bit of room for anything that might hang off of it there. So don't be afraid to kind of go over the edge with some of your flowers if you want to. It'll create a more realistic looking scene too, which is awesome. And then I'm going to go in with Clear Skies for that light blue color. Now I'm not even sure if flowers are blue, but it creates a really stunning flower. So I'm going into here and just laying down a little bit of color there. Again, starting from that inside portion, since this has a couple of those little pieces into it that you don't want to ruin on your stencil. And then with this, I like to go in with Trickleberry. I'm going to take another mini blender, and I'm just going to go into here with a little bit of that purple color. And that creates a super beautiful look. So it adds really nice, stunning shading to this blue flower, and that blue and purple just looks so beautiful together. So you can add as much or little color as you want to the center to add a little bit more interest to it, but doing this is one of my favorite parts and why I kind of really wanted it in this stencil form. And we're going to move on to the next step here. So then I'm going to bring in this centerpiece here. It has kind of this center and two other petals attached to it. So you just line it up, and again, this one is going to mask off that other piece that you had already blended. And then I'll go in with my Clear Skies again. Now I'm going to wipe off a little bit of color. I like to go in with this center a little softer than the rest. But again, you could really have fun with this and blend it however you want. These flowers can end up looking however you want or need for your projects. And then to finish this one off, it's pretty simple. It just has a little kind of inner piece right there, and all I'm going to do is take that, and then I'm going to bring in Bee Sting, and this is that dark red color, and I'm just going to go in here again with a really mini detail blending tool. And again, this one has a couple small spaces as well, so I'm just going to push my ink down into those spaces. Now to finish this one off, I love this leaf right here. It adds a really nice big leaf to this flower, and I think it looks great with this one. So I'm just going to go in again with some Overzealous I'll blend that right up to the edge of the flower there. And then if I want to, I can go in with some more later gator to add some shading onto this flower. So here are 3 of the fun flowers you can create with my stencil. Again, you can obviously make these whatever colors you want, and again, flip the stencil to create different versions of the flowers as well. But I just love how easy it is to stencil these down and create some really cool scenes with the leaves on your card. Now, something you can do to finish this card off really nicely is use this backsplash stencil. This one's one of my favorites. It's got a really nice, intricate, almost star design. And so it's really easy to place down onto your piece. I'm going to add a magnet right to the center because I won't do any inking there. But then I'll also add magnets kind of around the edges. Then I'm going to go in with this Distress blending brush, and this is really nice to get a softer blend on your project. So to finish this off, I like to go in with Woof, which is a really nice gray kind of mid-tone color. And I'm going to go in here, pick up a little bit of color onto my blending brush, tap off a little color to the side, and then all you need to do is just go into your project here and start your blending. And as I'm blending on my project with this blending brush here, I'm going in with circular motions right around that stencil there, but I'm not going right near those flowers. I just go to kind of the edges of the card. I'll go a little bit closer to those flowers, but I'm not really going to go all the way up to the edge to them. So once I'm done with that really soft blended background, it almost looks like we added little to no color onto here. And so once I've lifted off that stencil, it almost creates that halo look around those flowers, which makes them stand out even a little bit more than going straight up to the edge. So making that little white area around there with that fun gray backsplash background is what I love. So then for the sentiment, I'm just placing this banner down here. And I've stamped down the sentiment from my Dudes 2 stamp set. This one is 2 separate words that says "You're awesome," and I just put those together. You could also do "You're the best" as well, which I think is really fun. So I just stamped that onto a white sentiment strip there and cut off a little banner edge. So even though the whole card is one layer, popping the sentiment up makes it stand out a little bit more and really finishes off the card nicely. Now another thing I like to do is add watercolor through the stencil too, and you might not think of doing this, but when you do, it creates a really cool, almost hand-painted look to your flowers, which I just love. So I'm going to go into this piece and just, again, working on this stark white cardstock here. Now this is pretty important when you're doing this because the stark white will kind of take the water a little bit quicker into the paper than watercolor cardstock would. So all I'm going to do is hold my brush kind of upright like this, and it's going to keep the bristles from going too far in between the stencil, and I'll go in with less water than I usually would in my water brush, and I'm just going to add some water to the surface. Now you'll see here that it's kind of sinking underneath the stencil and seeping underneath and creating kind of a messy look that might scare some of you, but it also just kind of might surprise you in the end. So once I lift that off, you get a different look every time, which I just love. I'm going to heat set this. This is the Ranger heat tool. I like this just because it's nice and quiet, but it also heats it really lightly, so it's not going to push around any color or anything. So I like it when I'm working with inks and stuff like that. So I'm going to make sure that that doesn't have any ink on the front or back side of the stencil, and then I'll go in with my second layer here. Now this flower right here is really kind of whimsical and playful. So I love to do this one with the watercolor. I think it looks best with it. The other ones kind of lose a little bit of detail, but you can definitely still do it, and it creates a cool look as well. I'm going to go in here with Triple Berry next, and I've just kind of smooshed these colors onto the surface. This is my non-porous surface. It's just my desk here, which works as a surface to add my inks down. And then I'm able to pick it up with a water brush and create a really cool effect. Once I've done that, it's kind of building up layers. And again, depending on how much water you add or how little water you add, you get more or less bleeding. So you might want to play with that and see kind of the effects you can get. Here is another one that I just worked on a little bit earlier, and you can see there's more defined areas there. So depending on how much water you add, you can really play with the looks that you get with this. And then I'll throw in the center of the flower here. I'm just going to use a little bit of Slippery When Wet. There's that nice vibrant yellow color there. And then I'm going to, last but not least, just bring in a couple little leaves. So I'm just going into here, I'll bring in a little bit of Overzealous, and then I'll add just a little bit of Later Gator into there as well. So once this is done, you definitely could go back if you want to add some more detail into here. You could go back with some colors and maybe throw a little bit of detail into these leaves here. Maybe you want to add some lines down the center of the leaves to kind of finish those off. Or if you want to add a little bit more color to this flower, you definitely could add little lines into there to kind of finish off some of those petals. So there's lots of different things you could do to bring more detail into this flower if you wanted to. But then I'm just going to heat set this to finish it off. And you could bring a little bit of a fine liner into here too and really outline this flower and add lots of details that way. But I love the loose and free look this has here. So lastly, I'm just going to take some Clear Skies ink and I'm just going around the outside of this flower just with a little bit of water and that Clear Skies color. And this is just going to add a little bit of a background behind that flower to kind of ground it in place and add some interest there. So I'm just going right outside the flower, leaving a little bit of that white halo like we did earlier on the other example. And I really like that. That just makes it kind of stand out against the watercolor and it keeps it from bleeding as well. So just going right around the flower to kind of finish that all off. Okay, now for real, I'm just going to finish it off with some water flicks here with some of my ink. This is the Remember Me color, and that's just going to flick on some color there and kind of finish it off with that, which I just like. It adds a little bit of that free look to the piece, but you definitely could skip that and just leave it how it was. But I like how this looks with the splatters. It just adds some more interest to the card. Now to finish off my watercolor piece that I've created, I want to use a Wendy Vecchi top folding perfect cardstock card base, and this is in the gray color. And then I'm going to use my painted lines background stamp. I love this just because it's kind of a basic necessity. And I'm going to go in with my Woof dye ink color. All I need to do is just ink up two sides of the stamp. So I don't even need to ink up the whole thing. I'm just going to ink up this side, and then I'll ink up kind of right around this area. So once I've inked those pieces up, all I need to do is lay my card base right down over top of that area. And then I'm just going to apply a little bit of pressure to both sides. And it stamped really nicely there. Now the middle, I didn't really apply pressure to because I just needed it to stamp on both sides. And that middle piece is going to cover it up with the card base. So I'm just going to stamp down this hug sentiment from the Bestest Friends stamp set. One of my favorite things about that stamp set and the sentiments in it is a lot of them are just super encouraging that you can use for almost anything. So this is really great for this floral card right here. I love how this turned out with those painted lines on the side there, kind of a staple to have in your collection. And then I also love that flower in the middle that we watercolored with the stencil, which you usually wouldn't think of doing, but I just love how it turned out. And now if you don't want to waste this ink that you have on this side here, all you need to do is just go in here and spray it. Since it's a whole rainbow of colors, it might make some mud or brown, but I'm just going to kind of dip it here and there into the colors, and this is going to be the start of a next background, which is really fun. So just bringing that stark white cardstock in and dipping it into some of these colors. Most of the colors that we used were those mid-tones when we were creating the line. So look how beautiful of a background it creates with all of these colors here. And then I can go in and heat set that. Now I love that all we needed to do to get our next background is just dip the colors into the remnants of the kind of inks that we had left over, and look how beautiful of a background that looks. So I just love that all my colors coordinate pretty easily together so they create these beautiful backgrounds even when you're using all of the colors together. Okay, so for this one I'm going to bring back in my flowers here. I'll place my flower down, and then I'm going to place the magnets down as well. And I'm going to do something you might not think of doing with this stencil here, but I really love the look of it, especially against a really colorful background like this. Now for this, I'm going to go in with archival ink, and just jet black archival will create a really beautiful look on this background here. You might not usually think of doing this with flowers, but against a really colorful background like this, the archival can create a really cool effect. So all I'm doing is just going right over top of that flower. And when you're working with blacks, you have to be a little bit more careful about going over the edge with your color or anything like that, because you don't want this to show through any of those edges since it's that dark black. So if you want to, you can definitely mask off at this point any of those portions you're afraid of getting ink on. And we'll move on to the next section. Now for this, I'm just using the middle of that flower there, so it's just the same as we were doing earlier. Just quickly add that layer of black there. And the cool part about this is you can go as heavy or as light as you want with that black color. So if you want the black to still have some of that color showing through and be shaded, you could definitely add less of it. Or if you want it to kind of go in and black out that whole area, you definitely can do that as well. So you've got a couple different options when you're creating with the black archival ink. So with that, I'm just going to leave it. You don't need to do any center because you're not going to be able to see the center of the flower. And then for this one, again, I'm starting from the center there, and I'm just going to drag my color outwards. And then for areas like the center of this flower where you can either leave it blank or add a color in there, I'm just going to decide to leave it blank because the colors behind it will really nicely highlight that and show right through there. So then to finish this off, all I need to do is add some leaves. So I'll just go into here, use the excess ink, and I'll make these leaves a little bit lighter than the actual portions of the flowers. So you can see there, once we're done stenciling, I really love the look of those bold flowers on there against that colorful background. It's a super easy way to use some of those backgrounds you might have and really get a bold effect while doing so, because that contrast is super beautiful between the color and that nice black color there as well. Now you might be wondering how to clean the black archival ink off of your surface because it is that archival ink and it might be a little bit difficult to get off of things. What you can do is use the archival ink cleaner, and this is going to work nicely if you just dab it onto the surface. It's that solvent-based cleaner, so it's going to clean that ink off really nicely where water wouldn't clean it. Or you could also go in with an alcohol wipe, just a medical alcohol wipe, and go in here with this. So you can go in and clean that off as well to really easily just wipe off that ink. So it's not going to come off with just straight up water. Going in with that solvent-based cleaner is going to really easily pull that off of your stencil. So if you're working with an ink that's a little bit more stubborn, be sure to try that kind of cleaner. That solvent cleaner is going to pull off that ink super easily and really leave your stuff nice and clean. Now for my sentiment, I'm going to use the Bestest Friends stamp set. I'm just going to use my anti-static powder bag to get rid of any of the static that could be on the surface there. And then I'm going to go in with some embossing ink to ink up my stamp, and then I can stamp it right down onto the black cardstock. I love this one because it's super encouraging, and you can really add it to a card for kind of like a sympathy sentiment, which I just love. So to create a little banner, all I do is just cut one side in, and then I'm going to cut from both corners directly into that center line there. And that's just going to create kind of a finished look for your sentiment strips and really creates a beautiful little banner each time, which I just love to finish off those pieces. So to finish this card off, I've just added that little banner and then added my piece down with lots of foam tape onto a stark white cardstock card base that I've cut and scored myself. So this is really simple to do, but I love that pop of color back there with those black flowers. So kind of reversing what you might usually do, but it creates a really stunning effect on these bold backgrounds you might create. Alright, thank you guys so much for joining me in today's card making tutorial. I hope you guys really enjoyed those 3 different cards that I created using the Floral Builder Stencil, and I'm sure you guys can come up with many more ideas. And leave me a comment down below of your favorite card from today's video in the comments below. I cannot wait to chat with you guys down there. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button down below. So there will be links down below in the description to a full blog post and also all of the products that I used in today's video. So whether you liked the inks, some of the stamps, or this flower builder stencil that we used today, I would love if you use the links down below because it helps me out just a little bit. Thanks guys, I'll see you very soon in another card making and crafting video. Have a great day. Bye!